Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're decoding the hidden psychological techniques that are literally used to influence us every single day. I am so thrilled you're here with us because understanding these mechanisms isn't just some fascinating dive into human behavior. It is incredibly empowering. By the time we wrap up these tactics, we're going to make you absolutely untouchable to the people who try to pull your strings. So, let's open with a slightly chilling reality. Is someone reading you right now? The truth is, someone in your life probably knows exactly which words make you feel guilty, how to make you second-guess your own memories, and exactly which buttons to push to make you just explode. And the truly terrifying part? You might have absolutely no idea it's even happening. But here's the massive open loop we're exploring today. The most dangerous form of manipulation doesn't actually feel like an attack at all. It feels incredibly warm. It feels like love or deep friendship or this instant magical connection. Let's find out exactly how that works.
We're going to build an escalating playbook of tactics, starting off with level 1, pressure and silence, or situational brain hijacking. Now think about this fascinating multiplier, 2.5. This relates to the deeply ingrained science of manufactured scarcity. When a manipulator makes you feel like time is running out, they drop that "you need to decide right now," or they send that dreaded "we need to talk immediately" text, your amygdala actually fires up and your cortisol levels spike. Your logical prefrontal cortex basically just goes completely offline. Why does this work so incredibly well? Well, behavioral economics shows us that loss aversion, that deep fear of losing something, is roughly 2.5 times more powerful than the desire to gain something of equal value. They are constantly engineering this feeling of impending loss to completely short-circuit your logic.
So, how do you combat this escalating pressure when they demand a decision right this second? You use your untouchable response, the pause. When you deliberately pause, take a deep breath, and step back by simply stating that you never make decisions under pressure, you instantly disable that amygdala hijack. You're giving your brain the time it needs to cool down. And what's absolutely amazing about this is that this one simple act immediately exposes their true intentions. A legitimate, respectful person will honor the pause. But when a manipulator inevitably escalates their demands because you asked for time, well, they've just shown their entire hand.
So, the crucial takeaway here is this. Pressure is a red flag, not a deadline. Seriously, make this your first core rule. Whenever anyone, a salesperson, a boss, or romantic partner, tries to artificially rush your decision-making, treat that urgency as a blazing warning sign about their motives, rather than a genuine ticking clock. A second equally dangerous pressure trick is strategic silence. Most of us are absolutely terrified of awkward silence, right? It just feels so socially unnatural. Manipulators totally know this. They'll ask a pointed question or give you this heavy look of disapproval and then just wait. They use this uncomfortable, heavy quiet to extract unintended confessions, apologies, or concessions out of you, simply because your internal urge to fill the silence and smooth things over is overwhelmingly strong. But you have an untouchable response here too. Sit in the void. When you sit calmly in that tension and let them be the one to break the quiet, you completely flip the power dynamic. As the old classic negotiation saying goes, the one who speaks first after silence loses. Mastering your fear of this empty space makes you profoundly powerful in any confrontation. When someone tries to silently judge you into submission, just let the quiet hang there. Breathe comfortably, maintain a totally neutral expression, and watch their dominance completely evaporate as they scramble to fill the airwaves.
All right, moving it to level 2, the false connection. This focuses on emotional control. To test if someone is artificially engineering a connection with you, we use something called pattern interruption. This means deliberately introducing a mild contradiction to break a mirrored behavioral loop. You see, manipulators often use a tactic called mirroring, which intelligence operatives and high-pressure salespeople use all the time to build false intimacy incredibly fast. They subtly copy your body language, adopt your exact speech patterns, and suddenly claim to share all of your obscure values so your brain unconsciously registers them as familiar and safe. To figure out if it's real, you just throw a wrench in the gears. You interrupt the pattern by introducing a slight disagreement or breaking your own physical posture. Remember this: real connection is built through disagreement, not perfect alignment. If you introduce a small, differing opinion about a movie or some totally harmless topic, and they immediately pivot away from their previous stance just to agree with your contradiction, you have just caught a rapport hijacker red-handed. Genuine people are perfectly fine engaging with a respectful disagreement. Manipulators, on the other hand, will just scramble to fix the broken mirror. This false connection eventually builds into the most devastating emotional trap of the whole bunch: love bombing and intermittent reinforcement. The manipulator starts out with extreme intensity, love bombing you with overwhelming attention, flattery, and grand gestures. This literally floods your brain with addictive neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. But then, they abruptly switch to unpredictable coldness. They pull away for absolutely no reason. This sudden withdrawal triggers intermittent reinforcement, and it wires your brain for a trauma bond, functioning exactly like a slot machine addiction. You start working frantically, desperately pulling the lever, just trying to win back that initial warmth. Which brings us to a profound realization that can frankly save you years of heartache. Intensity is not intimacy. Consistency is. The absolute only way to break the psychological addiction of intermittent reinforcement is to establish a behavioral baseline early on. Document exactly how they treat you over weeks and months. When you write out their dramatic inconsistencies and literally force yourself to look at the pattern objectively, it becomes impossible for your brain to keep rationalizing their behavior. Now we need to transition into a significantly darker, much more insidious level. Level 3. Distorting your reality through cognitive control. Gaslighting relies on a highly mechanical three-phase architecture. Phase 1 is contradiction. It starts with small, flat denials of things you clearly experienced. They'll say, "I never said that," or "that literally didn't happen." Phase 2 is escalation. When you naturally push back, they don't just deny the event anymore. They pathologize your reaction, telling you that you're acting crazy, paranoid, or too sensitive. And finally, Phase 3 is isolation. They strategically separate you from the friends and family who could provide outside validation, making you dependent entirely on the manipulator's distorted version of what is real. Here is your ultimate, undeniable counter-move to gaslighting. Document everything. Memory is malleable. Records are not. By writing things down immediately with dates, times, and specific quotes, or by grabbing screenshots, you are creating unchangeable reality anchors. A manipulator absolutely relies on the fuzziness of human memory to plant their seeds of doubt, but they simply cannot edit your physical, time-stamped records. To combat another reality-distorting tactic known as social proof manipulation, you need something called epistemic independence. This basically means relying strictly on your own evidence, rather than falling victim to a completely manufactured social consensus. Manipulators love to exploit our deep evolutionary hardwiring for herd conformity. They'll claim that everyone agrees you are acting terribly, or that all our mutual friends think you're in the wrong. Your brain naturally registers this impending social exclusion as a major survival threat, which often causes you to cave simply to remain part of the group. But you have a brilliant way to shut this down instantly, because everyone is almost always no one. Just ask for names. When someone claims that everyone is against you or that everyone noticed your supposed mistake, calmly asking them for specific examples completely collapses the illusion of this false social consensus. Vague social proof simply cannot stand up to a calm, direct, and incredibly specific question. Just call their bluff. This brings us to the absolute peak of today's explainer. Level 4, the identity siege. This is the final form. At this stage, instead of just attacking your actions or a specific mistake you made, the manipulator begins actively redefining your core traits. They'll casually drop heavy labels like, "You've always been too emotional," "You're just a selfish person," or "You're clearly not cut out for leadership." Repeated over time, especially during vulnerable moments, these labels actually begin to stick. The manipulator slowly rewrites your self-concept until you no longer trust your own fundamental judgment. But you have an untouchable response here too, anchoring to documented behavioral evidence. This is why you absolutely must remember, your identity is yours, it's evidence-based, and it is completely non-negotiable. To defeat this identity siege, you need to mentally or physically list 5 to 10 specific examples of times you demonstrated the exact opposite of what they're accusing you of. Identity isn't just some passing feeling someone gets to assign to you. It is a consistent pattern of behavior across time. When you prove to yourself that your identity is based on hard, historical evidence, their false narrative just completely falls apart. You literally become bulletproof. Which leads us straight to our conclusion, becoming untouchable. Knowledge truly is immunity. Remember that open loop we talked about at the very beginning? The most dangerous manipulation doesn't announce itself as a threat. It disguises itself as a warm connection, walking right through your front door with a smile. But simply knowing these exact mechanical patterns, the pressure, the false connection, the reality distortion, and the identity siege, strips them entirely of their power. You're no longer reacting in the dark, you're observing in the light. So let me leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you have the shield, whose invisible influence will you notice first today? I challenge you to look at the relationships around you, in your workplace, your family, your friends' circles, through this completely new, unshakable lens. Because once you can clearly see the strings, no one can ever pull them again.